What would justice for Mohbad look like? Would it be when Naira Marley and Sammy have been handcuffed and jailed? Well, yes, generally that would make a lot of Nigerians and Mohbad's fans very happy. But then, how likely is this scenario going to happen? In this video, we're going to look at the possible outcomes that could play out in the cry for justice for Mohbad. In case you haven't seen any of our videos regarding Mohbad, check our page to catch up. In this video, we're going to look at all the possible ways that Mohbad can get justice and the worst case scenario that might make a lot of us very unhappy. So what are the chances that Naira Marley and Sammy will be held responsible for the death of Mohbad? As it stands now, the chances are uncertain, but if you look deeper, the chances are slim. As at the time of making this video, the autopsy result for Mohbad has not been released, so we still don't know the actual cause of his death. However, make sure you're subscribed to this channel so that whenever there is an update on that, you'll be the first to get notified. And if for some reason in the process of editing this video an update comes, I'll be happy to add it in. But this is a possible outcome that we should all expect, and how justice for Mohbad might be a little disappointing for a lot of people who are invested in this case. Now, for Mohbad's death, the fact is we know that he got an injection from a nurse and he collapsed after that injection and eventually died from it. Although some sources are saying he might have gone into coma and was quickly buried alive without given a chance to be resuscitated. That is a separate argument on its own, and maybe autopsy can reveal that. And if that turns out to be the case, I can imagine the hospital as well as his father being held accountable for that reason. But we're talking about Naira Marley and Sammy, the two top people everyone is pointing out as regards the death of Mohbad. Now, there's also a source that claimed that Mohbad exactly wasn't injected in the hospital, that he was at home feeling sick, and his boys called a nurse who came over and injected him with what is said to be a tetanus injection. And he fell sick for a while and then went to the hospital where he most likely died at. So there's a possibility the hospital was not where he was injected, and that could explain why his friends took his body away from the hospital, because normally, generally, if someone dies in a hospital, the hospital is supposed to prepare that person for the mortuary, prepare his death certificate, and maybe, do a proper documentation for that person. But it seems, according to what we are hearing, that after Mohbad was said to have fainted or died from the injection, his three friends took his body away from the hospital to only God knows where. Because up to this moment, we don't know the name of the hospital. We don't even know the name of the nurse. However, what we do know is that the nurse or a nurse has been arrested in connection to Mohbad's death. That is the nurse who was believed to have given Mohbad the injection that caused his collapse and eventual death. And we also know that the Association of Nurses and Midwifery in Nigeria has denied that nurse, saying that she is not registered and they don't know her, which means that this nurse is on her own right now. So who is she? Was she working for the hospital? And why would the hospital hire a nurse that is not registered? Or could it also mean that this nurse was the one who was the auxiliary nurse who had the pharmacy on the street and was called to check on Mohbad, only to end up giving him an injection that killed him? Regardless of the true version of how this happened, we know the nurse gave Mohbad an injection, a tetanus injection to be specific, even though we are not very sure, but sources are saying it was a tetanus injection that Mohbad was given that caused him to collapse. And since Sammy and Naira Marley did not give Mohbad this injection, how then do we blame them for his death? How then do we hold them responsible for killing Mohbad? Well, there is a way this can be connected to them, and we're going to stretch and reach a little bit. The first scenario could be that Sammy or Naira Marley are directly connected to this nurse, and they most likely hired this nurse to kill Mohbad. That would be the only way that this can be connected to them. And if that was the case, the nurse by now, I think, should have made that confession, unless she's holding out till the autopsy is concluded. And if for some legal reason the investigation can prove that either Sammy or Naira Marley know or have been in contact with this nurse in the past, then there's a chance or possibility that this nurse was hired to do the dirty job of these people who we know really wanted Mohbad gone. But that's the first case scenario. And how possible would that be? Because personally, I do feel the nurse by now should have said something if that was the case. Now, this is the second scenario, and I kind of want to believe that this could be as far as or the most likely way that Sammy or Naira Marley could be held accountable for the direct death of Mohbad. Mohbad was given a tetanus injection, and tetanus injection is for injuries that have been infected. We know he died of ear infection, And we also know that Mohbad had serious injuries all over his body that were sustained as a result of being physically abused and harassed by boys of the Malian records, or by boys sent by Naira Marley or Sammy in this case. The fact is, Mohbad had serious injuries all over his body, and these injuries were the reason why he fell sick and most likely requested a nurse who assumed the injuries were infected and gave him a tetanus injection. And this is the only way I think Sammy or Naira Marley can be dragged or directly held accountable as causing the death of Mohbad. And the only way is if these injuries can be proven that they were directly caused by either Sammy or Naira Marley, or caused by people sent by these two men. Because words on the street is Mohbad was always being attacked by Naira Marley boys or Sammy boys under their orders. And if this attack kept on going for a while and these attacks kept causing injuries, then it's not far-fetched to say that Naira Marley or Sammy were the ones who caused the injuries that caused Mohbad to get injected and lose his life. They probably may not be held for murder, but they can be held for causing the death of Mohbad, if well argued in courts. And even though there is an alleged ear infection, it could have also resulted from a slap or a punch or something that might have been done to Mohbad in the process of this fight. And if he has been battling with an ear pain as a result of a fight that happened a while ago and it led up to this point, then of course it's not far-fetched again to blame Sammy or Naira Marley, because they seem to be the only people sending guys after Mohbad to get beaten and harassed. The bottom line is, if all the injuries on Mohbad's body or the injuries that caused Mohbad's ear infection can be linked to either Naira Marley or Sammy then that would be the best way to hold them accountable, which I think is very plausible. If for some reason the autopsy points out that the injuries that this guy had gave him an infection, then clearly I don't think they need to move further on. And if for some reason it was this infection that caused or played a role in Mohbad's death, then this is all we need. This is all that is needed to arrest Sammy and possibly Naira Marley. This is all. All the autopsy results have to do is tell us that these injuries played a role in his death. And all we have to do is know who gave him those injuries. And if it can be identified or linked through a channel of thugs or warlords or fighters all the way back to Sammy or Naira Marley, then the police have a case against these two people. And that would be one way they can be indicted or, found accountable for causing the death of Mohbad. And I think that could be the most possible way. As far as paying the nurse or hiring the father, or as far as paying the hospital to do this thing, if that was the case, I think by now it should have exploded. But again, we can't just delete that part out because it's also possible. Right now, anything is possible. But the only problem is, for a known fact, Sammy was the only one said to be physically going after this boy. Naira Marley was not known or said to have directly caused any physical injury to Mohbad. Apparently, Sammy was the one doing all his dirty job. So even if the beating and infection is traced back to anyone, it will most likely end up on the laps or on the head of Sammy who we all know and have seen in videos going after Mohbad, physically causing injuries on him. So in the end, Naira Marley might escape this one and it will all fall on the head or thick laps of Sammy But where does Naira Marley come in, and how can Naira Marley be also indicted too? Because right now, he's the number one person that everyone hates and that everyone is pointing fingers at. For me, the only way I see Naira Marley going down for this is if Sammy goes down first. The moment Sammy is found wanting and found playing a role in the death of this boy, that is the only and quickest way for us to see that Naira Marley also would go down. But Sammy has to go down first. Naira Marley has lost over 500,000 followers since the death of Mohbad. Everyone is blaming him. In fact, he is the number one suspect up till now. And frankly, for a lot of us, justice for Mohbad equals the end of Naira Marley and the Malian record label. No one cares about the nurse. No one cares about the hospital. And frankly speaking, no one cares about Mohbad's father at this point. Because we all know the reason why he buried his son so quickly was because he most likely wanted to punish the mother, or was happy that his son was dead, or was ignorant of the fact that his son was just not anybody. It could also be that he was hired and paid. All those theories are out there and they are still open to possible execution. But right now, frankly, when it comes to the scale of people everyone is looking with one eye, Naira Marley is Number one, despite he might be the only one who have not directly, physically touched or beat Mohbad, but we all know that Naira Marley don't need to. What he had done to Mohbad is way worse than the beating and physical abuse that Mohbad had suffered. Because it's a known fact that the death of Mohbad is a combination of a long line of suffering and maltreatment, leading to a long year of depression and frustration endured by this young man over time in the hands of his record label CEO, Naira Marley. And everyone knows that Naira Marley does not need to raise his hand to hit Mohbad. What he had done to Mohbad or what he did to Mohbad is way worse. Physically speaking, if Mohbad and Naira Marley were to go toe-to-toe, Mohbad would most likely beat the living Malians out of Naira Marley. But that can't happen because given the power and monetary status that Naira Marley possesses, there will be no need for him to go toe-to-toe with Mohbad, because there would always be someone there to do it for him. Enter Sammy and his boys. Let's use How to Get Away with Murder for a moment. Imagine Naira Marley to be Annalise Keating and Sammy to be Fran, a hired thug who is believed to be highly connected and who does the dirty work for Naira Marley. The point is, despite not being known to directly inflict physical injuries on Mohbad, as that would be the only way Naira Marley can escape this. That is, if the injuries are linked to the beatings caused by Sammy and his boys. It is a clear vision that Naira Marley was the battery pack behind Sammy. Even in the video where Sammy was said to have gone to physically attack Mohbad, people said Mohbad did not even know who this man was. And that could have been the first time Mohbad was seeing him. Only then did they realize that Sammy was actually sent by Naira Marley. And the easiest and fastest way to get Naira Marley directly involved in the death of Mohbad is by getting Sammy handcuffed and found guilty of causing injuries and pains that led to the death of this boy. Sammy have to go down, only then would he be able to take Naira Marley down with him. He would have to explain to the whole world that the reason why he kept beating Mohbad was because his boss, Naira Marley, sent him to do so. And that is the only way, or that is one way, that Naira Marley can be put behind bars for the death of Mohbad. Now let's assume the worst case scenario. Let's assume neither of them are directly linked to the death of Mohbad. Let's assume only the nurses or the hospital are found guilty of causing the death of this boy, and none of them had any link with Sammy or Naira Marley. What then would happen? Well, it's one of two things. They may either get indicted in playing a role in the suffering or bullying and harassment and physical abuse that Mohbad suffered when he was alive. But that may be very tricky to do, seeing that Mohbad is not here to speak for himself. Unless, of course, multiple witnesses would come out to speak on his behalf, citing evidence of all the time that Sammy has gone to physically beat this boy and physically harassing. And that way, Sammy as well as Naira Marley will be held accountable for maybe abusing and physically beating this boy. But they may not be held accountable for the death of him, which means if they're going to do time, it might not be life in prison, worst come to worst. And of course, it will be easy to indict Sammy for beating Mohbad because we don't need to explain tire, evidence there. Now the second worst case scenario. If the nurse is solely held responsible and nobody comes out to indict Sammy or Naira Marley for beating Mohbad while he was alive, that means Sammy and Naira Marley would go scot-free, except their lives may never be the same again. Because the public remembers and shares in the oppression, abuses that Mohbad suffered while he was alive, in the hands of Malian music while he was still under them and even after he left. And maybe then Malian's record will suffer. Maybe then Malian's record would cease to exist. Maybe that would be the end of Naira Marley's music career, because I'm sure his drug career would still linger on. Or maybe, just maybe, Naira Marley would come forward when all this is over and make an apology video, taking responsibility, expressing regrets, and even offering to make things right by Mohbad's family. Maybe then would he win the hearts of Nigerians back, and we would have no option than to forgive him and give him another chance, as long as he admits to everything that he's been accused of, as long as he admits to causing this boy to be frustrated, and as long as he promises to make things right by Mohbad's family or Mohbad's child, giving him all the royalties he owes Mohbad. Or he could even step down as the CEO of Malian Music and put someone else there. That way he saves Malian Music, but he gets to go. And that's the way a lot of these people do it. They just step down and someone takes over, and we are happy that it's not Naira Marley anymore. But somewhere behind the scenes, we know he's getting his checks. That could happen. Or in the typical Nigerian fashion, over time we forget and move on, and Naira Marley releases a big song and we start bumping to it, forgetting that he caused the frustration. and played a role in the death of a young man we once loved. That could also happen, just maybe. Now, this video will not be complete if we don't explain the issues that Mohbad did have with Naira Marley and the Malian music. A lot of people know this, some people don't know, especially for our fans and viewers from other countries. Now, there have been explanations out there, however, I'll do my own bit quickly so you can understand the issues or why these people were always coming to beat Mohbad. The Mohbad versus Malian record versus Naira Marley. See, in 2018-2019, Mohbad was a struggling upcoming musician. He worked as a carpenter or he did odd jobs to raise money, and he used those money to go to the studio to record songs in which he shared on the internet with his friends, and he grew his followers. And over time, Mohbad became some kind of internet sensation and caught the eye of Naira Marley, who had a record label, the Malian record label. And given that Mohbad sings in street form, there's a street category of songs that, relates to Malian's record, it was easy for him to get signed, and he got signed, and this should be like the best thing that ever happened to this boy, because right now he's getting the platform of one of the biggest artists in Nigeria, Naira Marley, who was already big at the time. So after he had been signed, he's releasing songs, releasing hits, he's also writing for the record label. He was a very brilliant songwriter, a very intelligent one at that, very gifted, and most likely the most intelligent of all of them all, in my opinion. And I think that could be the reason why Naira Marley or the Malian's record label most likely did not like Mohbad. Mohbad knew what his worth was. Mohbad knew his worth. Mohbad knew what he could bring. Mohbad knew his talent was enough. He was the one person that knew he was being used and identified it quickly and wanted to leave. And that could be the genesis of a lot of their problems. Mohbad was smarter than him. Even in a live video that Naira Marley was addressing a situation, he tried, that is Naira Marley, tried to belittle Mohbad, tried to make it seem like Mohbad can't speak English, that all the English he's writing, he cannot put it in his song. And I was almost disappointed, because that was him trying to bring Mohbad down, because he knew Mohbad was clearly independently superior on his own lane. From what is being said and from what is coming up now, the Malian music record label was some sort of underground cover for a drug dealing business. Naira Marley has been arrested a few times by the NDLEA in relation to drug use. This was even before he found Mohbad. And that was when he released Sopi, and he was in jail at the time. So when he came out, his career did not suffer, because we all rooted for him, we all wanted him out. And he came out and continued his life. So by the time Mohbad was signed in, clearly the drug did not stop. Over time, or somehow it is believed that they kept on dealing drugs underground. And one day in 2021 or 2022, the NDLEA raided Naira Marley's house, and Naira Marley with Mohbad, Zinoliski, and some other people were arrested with a lot of drugs found in their possession. I think weapons too. And after they were taken to prison, this is where things started changing for Mohbad. Because the next day, that was when Mohbad made the cryptic live video of him accusing Malians of trying to kill him. I'm just
trying to ask, like I'm a bad boy. Now my mama saw I don't really mean it like that from my mind. You mean it, so I don't know these people are behaving on me. They have been doing bad things on me. I went mad into it because of this issue. Now they are trying to everybody in your world, please help me if I whoa, Amalia kill me. I beg, if I die like this.
Oh guys, stop this now. What's wrong with you?
I beg, I never started talk. No worry. They tell me they go our house. Oh yeah, call your police. I go anyway.
It's not clear what really happened while they were in the NDLEA office, but it was afterwards that Mohbad started crying that his life was in danger. For me, I believe, given the videos I've seen where he claimed that they gave him something to drink to make him look like he took drugs, and where he also said that Zino snitched on him, for me, I think what might have transpired was that they all tried to pin it on something. They all tried to point it at Mohbad. They wanted to make Mohbad take the fall for the drug dealing that was carried out in their house. And maybe Naira Marley and Zinoliski agreed to throw Mohbad under the bus. But Mohbad, being who he is, refused to be thrown under the bus and started saying everything that he knows. And I think that may have gone wrong for Naira Marley and his gang. And that is when they most likely started to throw this boy and starting to beat him, because snitches get stitches. That is what I feel. Although It's not very clear, but I think that's what could have happened. The NDLEA arrested them, and the best way to get out of it is to throw one person under the bus, and Naira Marley and Zino and the rest boys thought it would be best to throw Mohbad, and Mohbad realizing what they are doing because they give him something to drink and only him drank it so that the drug will be in his system and they can easily test it and find out that he's the one doing all of these drugs. However, Mohbad caught it quickly and refused to be thrown under the bus, and I think that is where the problem started. Although there's a flip side to this case, because over time Mohbad said he also wanted to change his manager. Maybe that was around the time he also wanted to change his manager, and that's why they threw him under the bus in the NDLEA office. Because Mohbad was complaining about his manager, because the manager was also Naira Marley's brother, and that should not be the case. Mohbad's manager should be someone from somewhere else, not someone working for Naira Marley. It's like HR is there to pretend like they are there for everyone, not realizing that they are there for the company itself. When Mohbad cried that he wanted to change his manager, I guess that started a big problem. Maybe Mohbad explained all the wrong things the manager was not doing well for him, and that caused the fight. Mohbad was beaten, another fight happened. We know that era of how another fight happened. Now, all of these things just became too much for Mohbad. This is when Mohbad realized that he doesn't need this. He only wanted to make music, not deal with drugs or fight with thugs. He realized that he was too good for this. Even though he was a street musician, he wasn't this street. He wasn't this ghetto. He just didn't want any part of this anymore. And believing in his own talent, he terminated his contract with the Malian record, citing that they were harassing him and also citing that they were owing him royalties. But he was willing to leave all those things behind to start his own record label and start his own life and just focus on his music. But it didn't end there, because after he left the Malian record, the Malians did not, leave him alone. They kept trolling him, which is why a lot of people felt maybe he had joined some kind of cult when he joined the Malian record. He had joined a cult because despite being intelligent and knowing a whole lot and knowing how to stand his ground, what Mohbad may not have known was what he was signing into when he was signing the deal to join the Malians record. Because now sources are saying that the Malians record also had some kind of cultist affiliation, that they were all in a cult. And you just can't leave a cult because you left the record label. And when he left, the harassment started. Naira Marley most likely started sending his boys after him because they kept knowing his whereabouts. If he was shooting a video with Zlatan, how did they know he was there? Somebody was obviously telling on him. And a lot of people were suspecting this new manager at the Den, a girl who was supposed to be his manager, but was always seen commenting on Naira Marley's post and Zinoliski's post, which meant that that new manager had some kind of relationship with Naira Marley. And maybe that was a manager that was spying for Naira Marley under the guise of pretending to be Mohbad's manager and caring for Mohbad's own intention. Because every single time that Mohbad was somewhere, somehow, some way, Naira Marley and his boys knew where he was, and Sammy was always there to harass and destroy everything he was working for. They did not want this boy to continue succeeding outside of them. They knew he would be able to succeed, and the best way to keep him down was to keep interrupting him and keep harassing him. They knew Mohbad was important. They knew Mohbad was fire. They knew Mohbad would succeed without them. And even though they gave him a platform and gave him a good amount of fame, they did not want him to continue feeding off of that. And Mohbad complained so many times that despite leaving the record label, they kept frustrating things for him. They kept making it difficult for him to book jobs. Whenever people who still think he was with the record would call the record, instead of Naira Marley to say, Mohbad doesn't work for us anymore, they would say horrible things to tarnish his opportunity. They would say he's sick, he's a drug addict, he's not well. And that would in turn make organizers not book Mohbad. Mohbad was losing jobs, he wasn't getting money. And this frustrated him because he had a life to cater for. And these things kept frustrating him because when he kept losing jobs and losing opportunity, he threatened to do something harmful to himself. All of this was still going on. Everything was still happening. Mohbad was still being frustrated despite leaving the record label. And it could have been as a result of the fact that the record label did not want him to succeed, or they were angry he left, or they felt he was going to say something if he becomes bigger than them. It's just one of those things where they don't want you to be bigger than them, I guess. It's just one of those things. Maybe Naira Marley was jealous and envious of Mohbad, and he did not want Mohbad to succeed outside of him. That could be it. But the truth is, there could be more. Everything I have just said is what we see in the surface, is what we know in the surface. It is very possible that what was going on in the Malian music record label is deeper than what we've just said here. It is very possible. So guys, that is the end of this video. I want to hear your thoughts on how you think Naira Marley or Sammy could go down for the death of Mohbad.